Chinese President Xi Jinping.
Xi Jinping.
Xi Jinping.
Xi Jinping.
Xi Jinping this week is making history and staying.
Did you know that China's president, Xi Jinping, whose personal net worth is reported to exceed $1 billion, still chooses to live a life of calculated modesty, a choice that stands in striking contrast to the lavish lifestyles and conspicuous consumption of some of his predecessors? This carefully cultivated image isn't simply a matter of taste. It's the product of decades of hardship, political exile, and a conscious strategy rooted in personal history and national symbolism. Born in 1953 as the son of Xi Zhongxian, a revolutionary hero and high-ranking party official, young Xi seemed destined for privilege and power in Beijing's elite circles. But when she was only 10 years old, everything changed. His father was purged in the Cultural Revolution, publicly denounced, and exiled to rural factories. The family was branded enemies of the state, and Xi's life of comfort shattered overnight. Their home was ransacked, his education cut short, and his sister tragically died under the political chaos. At just 15, she faced a decision that would define him: stay in the political crusades of Beijing or answer Mao's call to send educated youth down to the countryside. In the freezing winter of 1969, he boarded a train away from Beijing's fading lights to the remote village of Liangji in Shaanxi province, a place so poor and isolated that villagers lived in cave dwellings carved from loose cliffs. There, life was brutally hard. She slept on a straw mat in a flea-infested cave, battled lice, hauled buckets of sand, dug ditches, and endured long days of back-breaking manual labor. At first, the city-born princeling struggled to adapt. Homesick, he fled back to Beijing only to be arrested during a crackdown on deserters and forced into a re-education camp for months. Eventually, he returned to Liangji, a decision that proved transformative. Over 7 years, she not only survived but earned the village's respect, introducing practical solutions like biogas pits to alleviate fuel shortages and digging wells to ease daily hardship. His repeated applications to join the Communist Party, rejected nearly a dozen times because of his father's enemy status, reveal a young man determined to prove loyalty despite personal disgrace. In 1974, after years of rejection, she was finally accepted into the party, marking the start of a political journey rooted in lessons of endurance, pragmatism, and the reality of falling from power. These formative years became the backbone of the story Xi tells about himself, and the state tells about him, crafting the image of a leader forged by hardship, humble enough to live among peasants yet resolute enough to climb back to the heights of power. Today, Liangji has become a living monument. Tourists pay to visit the caves where she lived. Villagers share anecdotes of the teenage Xi pushing carts, tending crops, and helping build dams. State media and local guides frame this narrative as the spiritual birthplace of Xi's political philosophy, that power must stay grounded in the lives of ordinary people. This story isn't just nostalgia. It's political branding that resonates deeply in a country still marked by stark urban-rural divides and memories of rapid, sometimes ruthless modernization. She carried this experience into his early political career. After studying chemical engineering at Tsinghua University, one of China's top institutions, he was sent to govern remote, underdeveloped regions like Ningde and then Fujian. Instead of resenting these postings, she leaned into them, writing a book titled Getting Out of Poverty based on his hands-on work improving infrastructure and reducing hardship. His reputation grew, a leader who listened to villagers, pushed for rural development, and, critically, projected an image of personal austerity and discipline. As he rose through the ranks, becoming governor of Fujian, then party secretary of Zhejiang and later Shanghai, she refined this style, a low-profile, anti-corruption stance paired with bold economic pragmatism. His leadership in Zhejiang saw explosive growth, but what caught national attention was his crackdowns on corruption and emphasis on party discipline. By the time she reached the highest echelons of power in 2012, becoming General Secretary of the Communist Party and then President of China, this narrative of humble origins and disciplined living had become central to his public identity. Despite his significant wealth, reported by international investigations to include hidden family assets and stakes in state-linked enterprises. She famously projects frugality. He avoids ostentatious displays, keeps his wardrobe simple, and champions anti-corruption campaigns that have toppled thousands of officials, large and small. Critics see these campaigns as a political purge to consolidate power. Supporters view them as necessary to cleanse the party's image. Either way, the campaigns resonate with ordinary Chinese citizens frustrated by elite privilege and corruption, reinforcing Xi's image as a leader who, despite privilege, understands hardship. The contrast with past leaders is deliberate. Under previous administrations, especially during China's boom years, lavish banquets, private villas, and fleets of luxury cars among officials symbolized the widening gap between rulers and ruled. Xi's rejection of such excess aligns with a broader political strategy, tightening control over the party, promoting common prosperity, and positioning himself as both strongman and humble servant. This image is now reinforced by state-sponsored memorials, documentaries, and even television dramas highlighting his years in Liangji. Villagers recall him not as a distant politician, but as a young man who dug trenches and shared meager meals, an origin story carefully preserved and showcased. Globally, Xi's modest image also serves diplomatic ends, contrasting him with Western politicians often perceived in China as distant from working people. Domestically, it strengthens the narrative that the party under Xi remains the guardian of the masses, not just an elite club. His policies, from poverty alleviation campaigns to rural revitalization projects, echo this narrative. But beyond politics, there's a personal dimension, a man shaped by exile, family disgrace, and physical toil, who learned early that power is fragile and public trust hard-won. In sum, Xi Jinping's modest lifestyle isn't simply a personal quirk. It's the product of survival, strategy, and symbolism. A story that began in a cave and, through decades of resilience and political maneuvering, now shapes the trajectory of the world's most populous nation. Behind the billion-dollar fortune stands a leader whose public image, forged in hardship, serves as both shield and sword in the complex theater of Chinese politics, reminding citizens and rivals alike that while power may rise and fall, the story of the humble son of a purged revolutionary still shapes the future of modern China. In the wake of a scandal that had toppled his predecessor as party secretary of Shanghai, Xi Jinping faced a choice that would reveal much about his character and leadership philosophy. Accept the privileges offered to high-ranking officials, including a special train arranged to shuttle him comfortably between Shanghai and Hangzhou, or refuse them and remind everyone that such honors were reserved exclusively for national-level leaders, not for someone merely passing through on a local assignment. True to form, Xi declined the privilege, signaling his unwavering commitment to party rules and discipline and earning quiet respect from colleagues and subordinates alike. His approach was measured yet firm, embodying the idea that leadership was about serving the party and the people rather than self-indulgence, a stark contrast to the extravagance and entitlement that had brought down others before him. Even as whispers of scandal swirled around Shanghai, Xi chose not to orchestrate purges or seek political revenge, instead focusing on unity, stability, and keeping the broader goals of party governance firmly in sight. This steadfastness and seemingly humble demeanor did not go unnoticed in Beijing, where the upper echelons of the Chinese Communist Party were watching closely. It became increasingly clear that Xi's disciplined, pragmatic, and quietly authoritative style, shaped by decades of political survival, from the harsh rural fields of Liangji to provincial leadership, was building trust among China's most powerful decision-makers and setting the stage for what came next, an unprecedented ascent to the very pinnacle of Chinese politics. After being named General Secretary in 2012, Xi Jinping launched one of modern China's most sweeping initiatives, a relentless anti-corruption campaign targeting both tigers, the highest-ranking political and military elites, and flies, the countless local officials whose daily graft fueled widespread public frustration. It was an effort that fundamentally reshaped the Chinese political landscape. Tens of thousands of officials were investigated, disgraced, and often imprisoned, with notable cases like Zhu Yongkang, a former member of the Politburo Standing Committee, receiving a life sentence in a secret trial. The campaign's power was rooted not just in its scale but in its symbolism. Xi's insistence that even the untouchable could fall was underscored by the introduction of the 8-point regulation in 2012, a set of measures banning luxury banquets, curbing lavish ceremonies, and scaling back empty displays of prestige. This push against extravagance was a direct rebuke to the culture of opulence that had flourished among party elites, who for years had traveled in motorcades, dined in private clubs, and spent public funds on personal indulgences. Beyond restoring some measure of public confidence, the campaign tightened Xi's grip on the party, weakened rival factions, and reinforced his position as China's most dominant leader in decades. Critics, however, warned that while genuine corruption was undoubtedly being addressed, the effort also functioned as a strategic tool, a way to consolidate power, silence dissent, and transform the party into an instrument of unquestioned loyalty to Xi himself. Parallel to his anti-corruption drive, Xi articulated a new economic vision for China that pivoted away from the country's historical reliance on low-cost manufacturing and exports toward a model focused on domestic consumption, technological self-sufficiency, and environmentally sustainable growth. Initiatives like Made in China 2025 and the Belt and Road Initiative sought to boost national pride, secure global influence, and position China as an innovation powerhouse rather than merely the world's factory floor. His policies emphasized high-quality growth, reducing dependence on state-owned enterprises that drained resources through inefficiency and corruption, and instead channeling investment into green energy, digital infrastructure, and research. The transition was not without challenges. Slowing growth rates, trade tensions, and the complexities of reforming entrenched interests posed real risks. Yet Xi's narrative remained consistent. Development should serve the nation's long-term prosperity and security, not merely enrich a privileged few. The disciplined, controlled approach he championed in politics mirrored his economic reforms, both framed as efforts to strengthen the nation's moral and material foundations. Xi Jinping's personal life and public image reinforced this overarching philosophy of modesty, discipline, and service. Despite documented personal wealth and family connections that might suggest otherwise, state media and party messaging have consistently highlighted his rejection of luxury and insistence on living simply. His wife, Peng Liyuan, once remarked that at home, she was not a leader but a husband, an image meant to humanize the man who, in the public imagination, carries the weight of 1 billion lives on his shoulders. This deliberate portrayal extends to his official residence. Zhongnanhai, adjacent to Beijing's Forbidden City, is not defined by modern excess but by its history, symbolism, and quiet power. Built during the Ming Dynasty and converted into the Communist Party's nerve center in the 20th century, its architecture features traditional Chinese courtyards and gardens rather than towering glass and steel skyscrapers. Its understated design stands as a testament to the continuity of centralized authority. The power that shapes the country's destiny resides not in marble palaces but behind ancient walls, cloaked in tradition and political discipline. At a deeper cultural level, Xi's modesty reflects values rooted in thousands of years of Chinese philosophy, particularly Taoism and Confucianism. The Daoist, three treasures, compassion, frugality, and humility, advocate living in harmony with the natural order, avoiding arrogance, and seeking balance over domination. Compassion, as described in the Tao Te Ching, is considered the root of true courage. Frugality avoids waste and aligns life with the rhythms of nature. Humility, or not daring to be first in the world, warns against the dangers of pride and compels leaders to step back, allowing society to flourish collectively. These ancient ideals, intertwined with Confucian notions of duty and benevolence, form a moral framework that Xi's public persona consciously channels. The image of a man who, despite holding unparalleled power, does not place himself above the people he leads. Yet this philosophical modesty coexists with an iron-fisted political reality. Xi's removal of presidential term limits in 2018, his deepening control over the media, military, and key economic sectors, and his demand for absolute loyalty within the party underscore an authoritarian turn that some see as a modern embodiment of the old imperial son of heaven. the ruler whose personal virtue is believed to secure the stability of the entire realm. This paradox, modest personal habits alongside vast centralized power, is at the heart of Xi Jinping's leadership in China's current trajectory. His refusal of a special train in Shanghai might seem minor, but it was consistent with decades of carefully cultivated symbolism. From his teenage years living in a flea-infested cave in Liangji, where he shoveled sand, built dams, and earned the trust of local peasants, to the nationwide anti-graft campaign that humbled party elites and reasserted collective discipline. Through it all, Xi has crafted a narrative that blends personal humility with national strength, ancient philosophy with modern authoritarianism, and economic ambition with cultural pride. As China's global influence expands and domestic challenges grow, this narrative becomes not just about one man's personal choices, but about the very image of a nation trying to reconcile past and future, tradition and transformation. Whether Xi's frugality and modest public persona are expressions of sincere belief, calculated political theater, or both, they serve a profound strategic purpose, projecting an image of a leader who is at once ordinary and exceptional, servant and sovereign, and in doing so, reinforcing a vision of China's destiny shaped not by extravagance, but by unity, discipline, and a deeply rooted sense of cultural purpose.